They say 3 a.m. is the hour of the wolf, the hour when your soul whispers the truths you've buried. And if you've been waking up between 3 to 5 a.m. again and again, it's not just coincidence. It's not just insomnia. It's a calling, a wake-up call from the universe, a divine nudge that says, get up. There's something you're supposed to see, something you're supposed to become. You see, while the world sleeps, the real ones rise, not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally, mentally. They don't roll over and curse the clock. They don't drown the silence with noise. They listen, they align, and they act. This early hour is not a burden. It's a window, a sacred time frame where clarity is louder, the world is quieter, and the soul is more honest. If you waste these hours, you miss a power most people never experience. But here's the thing. If you're awake between 3 and 5 a.m., don't just lie there. Do these 3 things and watch your life change faster than you ever thought possible. Waking up between 3 and 5 a.m. places you in a unique space, one that most people sleep through without ever realizing its power. This time is cloaked in stillness. The world outside is silent. The streets are empty. The digital noise has paused. And for a brief window, everything slows down. This stillness isn't just environmental. It's deeply spiritual. When everything outside quiets, something remarkable happens within you. Your thoughts become clearer, your feelings more honest, and your intuition more alive. That's why the very first and most crucial thing you must do during this time is to simply sit in the silence and connect, not with devices, not with to-do lists, but with your inner world. It's a sacred moment, a rare opportunity to align your soul before the demands of the day try to pull you away from it. Most people open their eyes and immediately seek stimulation, the glow of the phone, the scroll of social media, the noise of news feeds. But all of that is just distraction. It's a defense mechanism we use to avoid facing ourselves. Because in the quiet, there are no filters. There are no likes, no messages, no notifications, just you, your truth, and the thoughts you've been suppressing. That's why the silence feels so uncomfortable at first for most people. But that discomfort is where the real transformation begins. If you can sit through that, breathe through that, and listen through that, you'll start to hear what your life has been trying to tell you all along. There's something deeply healing about this hour. Your brain is operating in theta or alpha states, brainwaves associated with intuition, imagination, deep relaxation, and spiritual awareness. You're not fully alert in the logical sense, but that's the beauty of it. Your ego is still asleep. Your self-doubt, overthinking, and fear haven't fully woken up yet. And in that window, your soul has room to speak. It's often in this time that people get sudden insights, clarity about relationships, direction about career, conviction about a decision. But you'll miss all of that if you reach for your phone or rush to get busy. The silence holds answers, but only for those brave enough to sit and listen. Connecting to the silence doesn't require a ritual, a course, or a guru. It requires intention. It requires you to sit with yourself and ask real questions. Why am I waking up at this time? What am I being shown that I've been ignoring during the day? What's stirring inside me that needs my attention? Most people are too distracted to ever ask those questions, let alone answer them. But if you ask them consistently in that early hour, you'll start to see patterns. You'll hear your intuition speak louder. You'll begin to understand yourself in ways that books and podcasts never could. This connection also does something subtle but powerful. It resets your nervous system. We live in a world addicted to speed, noise, and productivity. From the moment we wake up, we're racing. But when you start your day in stillness, your body registers that you are safe, that you are grounded, that you are not rushing into survival mode, but stepping into creation mode. This shift changes the quality of your decisions, your relationships, and your mindset throughout the day. You become less reactive and more intentional, less anxious and more anchored. And all of this begins by simply sitting in the silence and letting it do what it's meant to do: cleanse you, ground you, and align you. Spiritual traditions around the world emphasize the power of the early morning hours for prayer, meditation, or reflection. This is not a coincidence. This time is when the distractions of the world are minimized and the connection to something greater than yourself is maximized. Whether you call it God, the universe, source, or your higher self, the line of communication is clearer at this time. That's why monks meditate before sunrise. That's why prophets and sages across history withdrew into solitude at these hours, because there's something in this quiet that cannot be replicated at any other time of day. It's not just about being awake early, it's about what you do with that awakening. And in the silence, if you listen closely enough, you'll start to recognize what's been guiding you all along. The inner compass, the voice of intuition, the whisper of your purpose, it's always been there. But the volume of the world drowned it out. But now, in this sacred hour, there are no distractions loud enough to muffle it. You finally hear it, you feel it, you start to trust it. And that's when things begin to change. Not because the world changes, but because you do. You start responding from clarity instead of confusion. You start moving from peace instead of panic. And all of that begins not with a grand strategy, but with the simple, powerful act of sitting in the silence and connecting with what's real. There's a reason why some of the greatest breakthroughs, insights, and transformations in life don't happen during the noise of the day, but in the quiet early hours before dawn. Between 3 and 5 a.m., something profound takes place within your mind. The noise, the expectations, the outside world, all of it is still asleep. In that vacuum of silence and stillness, clarity begins to rise. Not the kind of clarity that comes from thinking hard or solving problems, but the kind that emerges naturally when your mind is still and your heart is open. This clarity is not forced, it is received. It comes when your mental waters are calm, when your spirit is not racing, and when your ego hasn't yet had the chance to armor up for the day. In those early hours, your awareness expands, and you start to see things not with your eyes, but with your understanding. Throughout the day, we're bombarded with decisions, tasks, and distractions. We're constantly reacting, putting out fires, jumping from one thing to the next. Our mental bandwidth gets eaten up by trivial things, notifications, emails, texts, and surface-level interactions. We rarely get a moment to stop and actually process what we're feeling, thinking, or needing. But in the stillness of the early morning, before any of that begins, your mind is free, not yet burdened by the to-do list, not yet influenced by social media, not yet entangled in the problems and responsibilities that usually take over. It's in this sacred space that deeper truths come to the surface. You start to understand what's been weighing on you. You begin to see the root of your emotions. You recognize what's out of alignment, what needs your attention, and what your soul has been trying to tell you. This kind of clarity is not always convenient. Sometimes it shows you things you've been avoiding. The job you're staying in out of fear, the relationship that's draining you, the dreams you've buried under obligations. But even when the truth is uncomfortable, there's power in finally seeing it. Because once you see clearly, you can no longer pretend. You can no longer make decisions out of habit or fear. You're compelled to act with intention. That's what clarity does. It disrupts the illusion and calls you into authenticity. And there is no better time for this disruption to happen than in those early morning hours when your defenses are down and your true self is accessible. Your subconscious mind is incredibly active during these hours. It's the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, and it holds the memories, beliefs, and emotional patterns that shape your life. When you wake up between 3 and 5 a.m., your brain is still in a highly suggestible state. You're not overthinking, you're simply aware. And that awareness gives rise to insights that can't be accessed when your mind is cluttered or overstimulated. In this state, you might suddenly remember a dream that reveals something important. You might feel a deep sense of knowing about a decision you've been unsure of. You might sense a calling or direction that you couldn't articulate before. This isn't random. This is the mind revealing what you've always known deep down, but couldn't hear through the noise. When clarity comes, it doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's just a gentle nudge, a quiet realization that what you're doing no longer aligns with who you are becoming. Sometimes it's a whisper that says, you're meant for more. Sometimes it's just a feeling that something needs to change, even if you can't fully explain it yet. That's why it's important to be present and still during this window of time. Because if you're rushing or distracted, you'll miss it. The mind won't scream these truths at you. It will simply offer them, and you must be receptive enough to receive. This clarity is what anchors you. It's what keeps you aligned with your values, your purpose, and your vision. It's easy to drift during the day, easy to be pulled into other people's agendas, to react out of emotion, to fall back into old habits. But when you begin your day with clarity, you operate differently. You become less easily swayed by external circumstances. You stop chasing things that don't matter. You become centered, focused, and deliberate in how you move. You begin to respond to life from a place of power rather than pressure. There is a profound difference between moving through life with clarity versus confusion. Clarity brings peace. Confusion breeds anxiety. Clarity empowers action. Confusion leads to procrastination. When you're clear, your energy becomes focused, your communication becomes honest, and your decisions become grounded. And that kind of clarity isn't just a luxury, it's a necessity if you want to live a life of purpose rather than passivity. But to access it, you must make space for it. You must sit in the quiet. You must honor the stillness. You must trust that the truth will rise if you are willing to receive it. Between the hours of 3 and 5 a.m., your mind is in its most receptive state. It's the sacred space where your thoughts aren't clouded by outside noise, where your heart hasn't been guarded by the demands of the day, and where your soul is closest to its original frequency. In that still, transformative space, what you speak has incredible power. That's why the words you say to yourself during this time are not just thoughts. They are seeds. They go directly into the soil of your subconscious mind. And the most powerful thing you can do during this window is declare your identity out loud, with intention and without hesitation. Who you say you are, especially in these early hours, becomes the blueprint for who you will become. You are not just waking up to a new day. You are waking up to a new version of yourself. And to fully step into that version, you must first claim it. That means speaking affirmations, truths, and declarations that align with the life you want, not the one you feel stuck in. You might not see the results yet. You might not feel the confidence yet. But the act of declaring your identity is not about describing your current state. It's about creating your future state. It's about speaking who you are becoming until you meet that version of yourself in real time. This is not empty positivity. It's a deliberate programming of your inner world. And the earlier in the day you do it, the deeper it gets wired into your mind. Most people let the world tell them who they are. They wake up and check their phones. They scroll through opinions, comparisons, headlines, and expectations. And before they've even taken their first full breath, they've absorbed 10 different voices telling them how to think, what to fear, and who to be. But when you start your day by declaring your identity, you flip the script. You become the author, not the audience. You decide what thoughts enter your mind, what beliefs shape your behavior, and what energy you carry into the world. Saying things like, I am powerful, I am healing, I am guided, or I am worthy isn't about pretending life is perfect. It's about anchoring your identity in something greater than your circumstances. The subconscious mind is always listening, especially in these early hours. It doesn't know the difference between what is real and what is imagined. It only knows repetition. It only knows frequency. So if you constantly tell yourself you're not good enough, that becomes the internal script. But if you replace that with truth, spoken daily, with intention, you begin to reshape the narrative. Over time, your brain starts seeking out evidence that supports the identity you've declared. Your posture changes, your energy shifts, your actions align, and what began as a whispered affirmation becomes a lived reality. Speaking your identity also builds internal trust. Every time you say, I am disciplined, and you follow it with a disciplined action, you reinforce that belief. It becomes easier to embody that identity the next time. This is how transformation happens. Not in dramatic moments, but in consistent declarations followed by consistent behavior. The early morning hours give you a head start. When you declare your identity before the world tries to define it for you, you walk through the day with a sense of self that is rooted, not reactive. You're less likely to be shaken by criticism or comparison because you've already grounded yourself in truth. It's important to speak these declarations out loud. Silent thoughts can be powerful, but the spoken word carries vibration. It echoes, not just in your mind, but in your body. Your voice is a tool of creation. When you speak, you are not just expressing, you are creating. You are commanding your inner world to align with your vision. That's why you must be intentional with your words, especially when your mind is most open to receiving them. Don't use these sacred hours to repeat doubts. Use them to speak destiny. Look in the mirror if you have to. Say your affirmations with belief, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. Over time, the discomfort fades, and all that remains is truth. Identity is not static. It's something you grow into. It's something you choose over and over again until it becomes second nature. And the best way to speed up that process is to make it part of your morning rhythm as soon as you wake up. Before the world speaks, let your soul speak. Let your future self speak. Let the most powerful, healed, focused version of you speak. Say who you are. Say what you believe. Say what you're committed to. And say it like you mean it, even if your voice shakes. Because in those quiet hours, when the world is still sleeping, the universe is listening, and more importantly, so are you. There is an extraordinary phenomenon that occurs between 3 and 5 a.m., a sacred silence that strips away distractions, an unspoken invitation to reconnect with your own soul, and a divine space where you can actually feel your thoughts instead of just thinking them. In this precious window, when everything is still and your spirit is unburdened by the noise of the world, the most transformational act you can engage in is reflection. Not the kind of reflection that's about criticism or regret, but the kind that asks the most powerful question of all: what am I becoming? Because whether you realize it or not, every day you are moving in a direction towards strength or weakness, growth or stagnation, clarity or confusion. The key is to become deeply aware of that direction. And that awareness is born in moments of reflection. Most people are living on autopilot. They wake up, go through the same routines, react to the same triggers, and carry the same burdens without questioning them. But when you break that pattern and choose to sit with your thoughts in the early morning, something changes. You stop being a passenger in your own life and you start becoming the driver. Reflection is how you take your power back. It's how you understand your patterns, your behaviors, your emotional responses, and your choices. It's how you make sense of your story, not just as something that happened to you, but as something you're writing every single day. You realize that nothing is random, that every decision shapes your future, and that every reaction is either a repeat of the past or a reset towards something better. When you sit in silence and truly reflect, your life begins to speak to you. You start seeing the lessons hidden in your pain. You start recognizing the opportunities that fear made you overlook. You notice the habits that are draining your energy, the relationships that are costing your peace, and the distractions that are stealing your purpose. Reflection gives you the rare ability to press pause on life and look at it from a higher perspective. You're not just reacting, you're analyzing, observing, and most importantly, learning. That's where the transformation happens. Not when life gets easier, but when your understanding gets deeper. In these early hours, your mind is clear enough to separate emotion from truth. You're able to ask yourself hard questions without judgment. Who am I becoming? What did I avoid yesterday that I must face today? What pattern am I repeating that needs to be broken? What truth have I been afraid to admit? These questions aren't comfortable, but they're essential. They strip away illusion. They expose your excuses. They reveal your next step. Because until you reflect honestly, you cannot change intentionally. You'll stay stuck in cycles, blaming circumstances, repeating the same stories, and wondering why nothing feels different. But with honest reflection, you start to see that the power to shift your life was always in your hands. You just had to become aware of it. This kind of reflection requires stillness. You can't rush it. You can't fake it. You have to sit with yourself. No music, no screens, just your thoughts, your breath, your awareness. And in that space, you will meet parts of yourself you've forgotten or neglected. You'll meet the dreams you've buried under fear. You'll hear the voice of your intuition getting louder. You'll feel the weight of things you need to let go of. And you'll remember who you are, not the version that's been shaped by pressure, but the version that was born with purpose. As you reflect, you'll also begin to notice your wins, the small moments of growth that often go unnoticed. You'll see how far you've come, how much you've healed, how resilient you really are. This is just as important as seeing your flaws, because reflection isn't about tearing yourself down. It's about building awareness, and awareness is the foundation of self-respect. It's what helps you. It's what reminds you that you're not stuck. You're just waking up. It shows you that every morning is another chance to pivot, to rise, to realign with the person you're meant to be. One of the most powerful parts of morning reflection is reconnecting with your values. What do you actually stand for? What do you believe in when no one's watching? What kind of energy do you want to bring into the world? These are not questions you can answer in the middle of a hectic day. They require space, silence, and sincerity. And when you answer them honestly, your actions throughout the day begin to reflect your core instead of your conditioning. You stop chasing things that don't matter. You stop saying yes out of guilt or fear. You stop allowing people or situations to pull you out of character. You become steady, centered, and self-directed, not because life is perfect, but because you are clear. Reflection is the compass that keeps you aligned. Without it, you drift. With it, you stay grounded in purpose. And the earlier you begin your day with it, the more powerful your day becomes, because you're no longer reacting, you're responding. You're no longer wandering, you're walking with intention. And you're no longer surviving, you're transforming. When the world is quiet and the sky is still dark, something sacred begins to stir. Not just outside, but within you. Between 3 and 5 a.m., you are gifted a window of uninterrupted clarity, and what you choose to do in that space can set the emotional tone for the rest of your day. Most people think transformation starts with major actions, but in truth, it often begins with mastering your internal world. And one of the most effective ways to do that in these early hours is by practicing emotional grounding. This isn't just about feeling better. It's about taking responsibility for your emotional energy before the world has a chance to hijack it. The most successful and centered people in the world don't just wake up early to hustle. They wake up early to anchor themselves. They recognize that before the meetings, messages, responsibilities, and interactions come rushing in, they need to meet themselves first, to check in, recalibrate, and regulate their emotions. Emotional grounding at this hour doesn't require anything fancy. It simply requires presence. You begin by checking in with yourself, not as a critic, but as an observer. How am I feeling right now? What emotion is sitting beneath the surface? Am I anxious, peaceful, heavy, excited, uncertain? Naming your emotion without judgment is one of the most powerful acts of emotional intelligence. It allows you to respond to your state rather than be ruled by it. And in the silence of early morning, you're finally able to hear what your heart's been trying to tell you all along. There's no competition for your attention. There's no demand to perform, just pure, honest awareness. And that awareness is what allows you to meet yourself with compassion instead of avoidance. Too many people carry yesterday's emotions into today. They wake up and instantly feel overwhelmed, not because something new has happened, but because unprocessed emotions from the past are still sitting inside them. That's why grounding is essential. It allows you to release what doesn't belong to the present moment. You might have been angry yesterday, and that's okay. But this is a new day, and unless you intentionally clear that energy, it will follow you into conversations, decisions, and reactions. Emotional grounding is how you clean your inner slate. It's how you ensure that you're responding to life with intention rather than old emotional residue. It's how you avoid projecting yesterday's pain onto today's opportunity. Breathing is often the first step, not shallow breathing, not distracted breathing, but deep, conscious breath, slow, rhythmic, and intentional. When you breathe deeply in the early morning, you signal safety to your nervous system. You calm your mind, steady your heart, and bring your awareness back into your body. Most people live completely disconnected from their bodies because their minds are always racing, but your body always tells the truth. It stores tension, holds on to emotional weight, and gives signals when something's off. By connecting with it through breath, you begin to soften that tension and move into a grounded, empowered state. This state is where clarity lives. It's where calmness becomes strength. It's where your emotional stability becomes unshakable, regardless of what the day throws at you. Journaling can also be a form of emotional grounding. When you write down what you're feeling, you remove the chaos from your mind and place it into order on the page. You can ask yourself, what do I need to release right now? What am I grateful for in this moment? What do I want to feel today, and how can I create that feeling? These questions guide your emotions into purpose. They give your inner world structure, and structure is what emotions often need, especially in times of uncertainty. Emotional chaos doesn't need to be suppressed. It needs to be guided. It needs a healthy outlet. Morning grounding rituals provide that outlet, giving your emotions a safe place to land before you step into the outside world. What's powerful about grounding is that it builds emotional resilience. The more you practice it, the more you begin to notice your triggers before they control you. You start catching yourself mid-thought and asking, is this thought helping or hurting me? You pause before reacting and choose a better response. You feel the waves of anxiety or sadness without being swept away by them. And you realize that your emotions are not your enemy. They are messengers, but they only deliver clarity when you stop long enough to listen. Emotional grounding gives you that pause. It slows the momentum of negative emotions and allows you to shift your internal state without needing anything external to change. Another profound benefit is that emotional grounding strengthens your intuition. When your emotional energy is calm and centered, your inner guidance becomes louder and clearer. You start making decisions from a place of wisdom instead of fear. You can sense when something is aligned or off, not because of logic alone, but because your emotional clarity sharpens your perception. In this way, grounding is not just about feeling good. It's about becoming aligned with your higher self. It's about building a relationship with your emotional world so strong that external chaos cannot easily shake your inner peace. This early hour is a gift, not just to reset your mind, but to align your emotions with who you want to be. When you walk out the door emotionally grounded, people notice. Your presence carries stability, your words hold weight, your energy influences instead of reacts, and even if the day becomes hectic, you remain rooted because you started from a place of balance rather than imbalance. There's a moment in the early morning when the world hasn't fully woken up, when the distractions haven't yet arrived, and you're standing at the threshold of potential. That's the moment to visualize your future. Not just vaguely imagining a better life, but intentionally stepping into the energy of the person you're becoming. Visualization between 3 and 5 a.m. is powerful because your mind is in its most impressionable state. The subconscious is more open, the noise of external influences is absent, and your mental resistance is at its lowest. In this stillness, you have a rare opportunity to plant visions that can reshape how you think, feel, and act for the rest of the day and eventually for the rest of your life. This isn't daydreaming. This is mental training. This is spiritual preparation. This is you becoming who you're meant to be before the world tells you who you should be. When you visualize your future, you're not just imagining outcomes. You're conditioning your mind to believe in the possibility of a different reality. And belief is everything. If you don't believe something is possible for you, you won't take action. You'll self-sabotage, procrastinate, or stay stuck in cycles that feel safe but keep you small. Visualization breaks that cycle. It speaks directly to your subconscious and says, this is where we're going, and we're going to feel it before we see it, because the brain doesn't fully distinguish between real experience and vividly imagined experience. That means when you deeply visualize success, confidence, peace, healing, or transformation, your brain begins to rewire itself as if it's already happening. You start carrying the energy of your future self into your present actions, and that shift in energy is what changes the trajectory of your life. In these sacred morning hours, visualize the person you want to become. See yourself waking up with purpose. Watch yourself speaking with confidence, moving with clarity, choosing with integrity. Visualize your body language, strong, grounded, and open. Imagine the way people respond to you, not because you seek validation, but because your presence is undeniable. Picture the kind of life you're building, where you live, what your routine looks like, the way you treat yourself and others. Feel the emotions attached to that future. Let yourself embody the joy, the peace, the strength. The more sensory rich and emotionally connected your visualization is, the more effective it becomes. You're not just seeing it, you're feeling it. And that feeling leaves a mental imprint that guides your behavior. Visualization is also a way to overcome fear and doubt. So often, people wake up with anxiety, replaying worries or regrets. But when you intentionally take time to visualize your future, you redirect your mental energy. You train your mind to focus on possibilities instead of problems. You begin your day empowered instead of reactive. You're no longer a prisoner of the past. You're an architect of the future. And that shift from reactive to proactive thinking is a major step toward transformation. It means you're no longer waiting for life to change. You're preparing for it. You're aligning your thoughts with your vision. And that alignment is what attracts the right actions, opportunities, and people into your life. Visualization also strengthens your self-image. Most people operate from a self-image that was shaped by pain, failure, rejection, or limitation. But when you visualize your higher self consistently, you begin to reshape that image. You stop seeing yourself as someone who always struggles, gets overlooked, or can't change. You start seeing yourself as powerful, capable, and worthy. That new self-image changes everything. It shifts how you talk to yourself. It influences the risks you're willing to take. It affects the boundaries you set and the dreams you pursue. When your internal picture of yourself changes, your external reality begins to mirror it. Morning visualization isn't just about long-term goals. It's also about setting the emotional tone for the day ahead. You can visualize yourself handling challenges with calm, responding to stress with strength, and moving through your tasks with clarity and flow. You can picture yourself being fully present in your interactions, deeply focused in your work, and resilient in the face of unexpected problems. This kind of mental rehearsal doesn't just prepare you, it programs you. It builds emotional memory. So when challenges arise, you've already practiced the best version of yourself showing up. The key is consistency. Visualization isn't a one-time thing. It's a discipline. It's something you return to every morning, like a spiritual and mental workout. Over time, it builds internal momentum. It creates a new default setting in your mind. Instead of automatically expecting stress, failure, or chaos, you begin to expect strength, growth, and progress. Your mind starts scanning for alignment, for open doors, for steps to take. And that expectation becomes your internal compass, leading you toward the very future you've been envisioning. Between 3 and 5 a.m., when the world hasn't started shouting yet and distractions are nowhere in sight, the greatest opportunity emerges to strengthen your connection with God. This isn't about routine religion or rehearsed prayer. It's about intimate communion, the kind that stills your soul and reminds you who you are beyond the noise of life. In those quiet moments, you're not just reaching out for divine help, you're realigning your spirit with divine truth. The early morning hours have always been considered sacred in almost every spiritual tradition because they allow for clarity, stillness, and a deeper sensitivity to spiritual presence. When you connect with God at this time, you're choosing to prioritize your spiritual foundation before anything else lays a claim on your energy. This kind of alignment doesn't just protect you for the day ahead. It empowers you, anchors you, and gives your actions eternal purpose. When you start your day with connection to God, you reset your internal compass. You're not just seeking comfort, you're seeking instruction. You're asking for guidance that doesn't come from your emotions, your logic, or the opinions of others, but from the one who sees the entire picture. This level of connection is not passive, it's active listening. It's not about talking to God as if he were distant, but about recognizing that he is near, always willing to speak, to comfort, to correct, and to direct. In this stillness, you can ask the real questions. What do you want from me today? Where am I not aligned? What fear am I holding on to that you want me to release? These are the questions that don't just change your morning, they change your heart. There is something profoundly healing about sitting in God's presence before the world wakes up. It's where your soul breathes again, where you stop striving, where you stop performing, where you let go of the need to prove anything and simply rest in the truth that you are loved, seen, and chosen. That awareness becomes your armor. It strengthens you in ways no motivational speech or productivity hack can. Because once you've touched the peace that comes from God, the chaos of the world loses its grip on you. You become less reactive, less easily shaken, more aware of the bigger picture behind your pain, and more committed to walking in alignment with your purpose. During these early hours, you can pray not just for blessings, but for wisdom, not just for protection, but for courage. You can intercede for others, ask for healing, or simply sit in silent gratitude. The act of talking to God doesn't always need to be formal. Sometimes it's just honesty, raw, unfiltered, tear-stained honesty. Sometimes it's worship, where you lose yourself in awe of who he is. Other times, it's stillness, where no words are spoken, but your spirit communes with his in a way that words can't capture. This time becomes the altar where your worries are laid down and your strength is renewed. It's where the weights you carry are exchanged for peace that doesn't make sense, but changes everything. One of the most powerful things that happens when you connect with God in the early morning is that your perspective shifts. You start seeing your problems through the lens of faith rather than fear. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what are you teaching me through this? You stop panicking over delays and start trusting divine timing. You begin to walk with a kind of spiritual confidence that doesn't come from having all the answers, but from trusting the one who does. And that confidence radiates. It changes how you speak, how you think, how you treat others, and how you carry yourself. When your heart is tuned to God first, you're less likely to be tuned into comparison, negativity, and anxiety throughout the day. You don't need to search for validation because you've already received it from the highest source. You don't need to rush into tasks trying to prove your worth because you've already been reminded of your identity. You begin to live from a place of overflow rather than deficiency. You give because you're full, not because you're desperate for approval. And that shift changes everything, from your relationships to your work ethic, from your decision-making to your emotional resilience. This connection also opens your ears to divine promptings throughout the day. You'll begin to notice things differently. Subtle nudges, insights, or warnings that you may have otherwise missed. Your discernment sharpens. You become more sensitive to divine timing, to open doors, to red flags, and to moments where your obedience is required. This isn't superstition, it's spiritual sensitivity. And it starts in the early morning when you train yourself to hear God's voice before any other voice has a chance to speak. That early alignment builds momentum. It's like calibrating your compass before you set out on your journey. Without it, you may still move, but you risk moving in the wrong direction. Choosing to connect with God first thing in the morning is more than a habit. It's a declaration. It says, before I speak to anyone else, I'll speak to you. Before I listen to the world, I'll listen to you. Before I give my energy to everything out there, I'll give it to the one who gave me breath. That choice, repeated daily, doesn't just lead to spiritual strength, it leads to spiritual transformation. When you wake up between 3 and 5 a.m., one of the most transformative things you can do is journal your thoughts. This isn't about writing for perfection or trying to craft beautiful prose. It's about releasing what's been stored up in your mind and soul. In those quiet hours, your thoughts are clearer, your emotions are closer to the surface, and your intuition is louder. Journaling at this time allows you to capture your truest self before the demands of the day distort your inner voice. It's a direct bridge between your subconscious and conscious mind. You get to pour out everything, your fears, your hopes, your prayers, your confusion, your gratitude. And in the process, you begin to understand yourself on a deeper level. This practice is both cleansing and clarifying. It helps you see patterns in your thinking, track your emotional growth, and recognize the lies you've been believing so you can replace them with truth. Journaling in the early hours also serves as an emotional release valve. We carry around so much mental clutter, unfinished conversations, painful memories, doubts, guilt, unspoken dreams, and often we suppress these things just to function. But suppression isn't healing. Suppression builds internal pressure that eventually leaks out through anger, anxiety, or apathy. Journaling gives those bottled up thoughts a safe place to land. It's your sacred space to vent without judgment, to cry without holding back, to confess what you can't say out loud. And sometimes just seeing your thoughts on paper is enough to disarm them. You realize that what felt overwhelming in your mind loses its power once it's written down. It becomes more manageable, more objective, less consuming. Another powerful benefit of journaling between 3 and 5 a.m. is that it aligns you with your intentions for the day. It's not just about reflecting on your past, it's about declaring how you want to move forward. When you write down your goals, your mindset, and the kind of energy you want to embody, you start to live on purpose rather than by default. You're not letting your mood or your circumstances dictate your behavior. You're setting the tone internally before the world has a chance to influence you. This gives you a sense of control and ownership over your life. It puts you in a proactive state where you're creating your reality instead of reacting to it. Your journal becomes a personal mission statement that you can return to throughout the day to stay grounded and focused. Journaling also fosters gratitude, and gratitude is one of the most transformative emotions you can cultivate, especially in the early morning. When you take time to write down what you're thankful for, you rewire your brain to see abundance instead of lack. You shift from complaining to appreciating, from worrying to trusting. Even on the hardest days, there's always something to be grateful for. A lesson, a moment of peace, a person who showed you love, a breakthrough that's on the horizon. Gratitude journaling trains your mind to focus on these things. And that focus becomes fuel for joy, resilience, and hope. The more consistently you practice this, the more your baseline level of happiness rises, not because your circumstances have changed, but because your perspective has. In addition, journaling between 3 and 5 a.m. can help you confront and rewrite limiting beliefs. We all carry internal scripts, stories we tell ourselves about who we are, what we're capable of, and what we deserve. These scripts are often inherited from past trauma, societal conditioning, or repeated failure. But just because a thought feels familiar doesn't mean it's true. When you journal, you can challenge these thoughts. You can ask yourself, where did this belief come from? Is it helping me or holding me back? What would I believe instead if I truly loved and trusted myself? This kind of inner work can't be rushed or done in the middle of chaos. It requires the kind of stillness and honesty that the early morning provides. And as you begin to replace those old beliefs with empowering truths, you'll start to show up in your life differently, with more courage, more self-respect, and more alignment. Journaling in this sacred window also strengthens your self-awareness. You begin to notice how your thoughts affect your emotions, how your emotions affect your actions, and how your actions shape your outcomes. You stop living on autopilot and start living with intentionality. You realize where you've been self-sabotaging, where you've been playing small, and where you need to draw new boundaries. This kind of clarity doesn't always come quickly, but when it does, it's powerful. It enables you to make decisions that honor your values and protect your peace. It helps you navigate relationships with wisdom instead of just emotion. And most importantly, it gives you the courage to become the version of yourself you were always meant to be. Journaling becomes a record of your journey. Over time, these pages become proof of how far you've come. They remind you of prayers that were answered, seasons that were survived, and lessons that were learned the hard way. When you look back at old entries, you'll see growth you didn't even realize was happening. You'll see how resilient you are. You'll see how much wisdom you've gained. And that reflection builds self-trust. It's easy to forget your progress when you're in the middle of struggle, but your journal becomes a mirror that reflects the strength you didn't know you had. There are two kinds of people in this world. Those who wait for life to happen and those who wake up and make it happen while it's still dark. If you've been waking up between 3 and 5 a.m., you are not broken. You are becoming. The world may call it insomnia, but your soul knows it's evolution. So don't just lie there. Don't wish it away. Use it. Embrace it. Answer the call. Because if you consistently rise during these sacred hours and do these 3 things, connect to the silence, declare your identity, move into momentum, then you will rise not just from sleep, but into your next level. While others stay stuck in cycles, you'll soar into purpose. While others hit snooze on their potential, you'll walk into yours. This hour is yours. Don't give it away. Own it, use it, and let it make you unstoppable.